This will be a quick video showing the torque limiter mod. I made a video before, but this time I thought I'd do a little bit of overview to talk about some of the tuning that you can kind of do, just a little bit. So you'll have the torque limiter, you'll have part 1, then you'll also have part 2, and this is kind of a new addition. This is part 3, so this kind of beefs up this particular portion. Technically optional, but I'll start including these, I think, with the kit, just in case anything happens and you need a replacement part. And it's pretty easy to change anyway, so let's get started. First things first, you'll need to take off the encoder wheel. Screws. This just lifts right out. And then for this one, go ahead and disconnect cables. Just be careful not to rip the board out. And pay attention to the labels. These are labeled. This one is number 1. Alternatively, you can unscrew this part out first. And it may be easier to unplug since there's this post in the way. Just like that. And then you'll also have to take these out. Cool. So these boards slide out. They should be identical. And then you can save this, put this aside in case you need it. And then you'll have your replacement part. So you'll go ahead and slide these back in until they bottom out. Just like that. Then we'll go ahead. We'll only screw back in the middle screw for now. These are going to be fresh, so it'll be pretty hard to turn and screw in as you make the threads into the plastic. Just finger tight. It's good enough. It'll rest right on top of the little sensor boards. Okay. Then you can go ahead, I guess you can plug it back in at this point. So remember which one is which. And then this just sits on like that. And remember that the screws up here are different than the screws down here. The screws down here are longer than the screws up here, as you can see. Now, since you're threading this into plastic again, you can kind of go counterclockwise until you feel a drop, like that. And then you can thread it in, that way you're not making a double thread. Counterclockwise, it drops in, and then you screw it in. This one, do a little bit tighter than you would prefer for finger tight, just because you want to make sure this doesn't move at all. Just like that. Now we have the torque limiter in part 1. Basically, this is a magnetic torque limiter, so it should theoretically never really wear out. and you can see there's holes for the screws and holes for the tabs. So go ahead and first take the screws, stick them in. If you're wondering, it's the screws with the washers on it. Go ahead and put it in. Put the wheel back on, align the center. And you can kind of align the screw hole. That didn't work. There you go. And then just take one of the screws, start it, and then see if you can find the other hole for the other screw. And start that one, so you kind of get it locked in. And then hold the knob as you tighten these, so it doesn't spin. Now when you turn it, you want to make sure it turns freely. I haven't removed the dampeners, so it's not going to spin freely, but if you do remove the dampeners, which you can see in the other video, this should spin freely. And if you look at the screw head, you can push down and make sure, there's a good amount of space. It doesn't rub against anything. So now you can align the tabs of the torque limiter with that. And you kind of push it. If you don't align it perfectly, that's fine, because what you can do is that if you don't align it, let's say you're off a little bit, it'll stop a little early. If you hold the knob, you can kind of pinch and then turn it, and you'll find a place where it falls into the slots, and you can kind of push it down like that. Okay, and then go ahead and line up the torque limiter so the slot kind of goes this way, right there. And then we'll put on this piece. I find it easier if you go ahead and you take your screws and you kind of start putting them in first, just so they are ready to go. Just like that. And this will sit right on top. And make sure kind of do the same thing. If you're reusing this piece, you can kind of do the counterclockwise and then clockwise thing again. Otherwise, you'll be making new screw threads. I recommend you can start it on one side, align it on the other side, and make sure this is all lined up. And then start screwing this side down, and then kind of go back and forth. And this one, if you're using the replacement piece, you can kind of go a little bit tighter than normal. Otherwise, I would be pretty gentle, just do finger tight, because even by default, even without this mod, these pieces are kind of known to crack sometimes, so do be careful. Okay, just like that. And theoretically, you're good to go, but you can also check and do a little bit of tuning. As you can see, the torque limiter does engage with the top piece, but there's a good amount of space that you could do. So what you can do is you can pull up the torque limiter just a few millimeters, just like a millimeter or two. You still want it to engage with the tabs at the bottom, so you don't want to pull it out too far. That's like too far, but make sure that when you turn the knob, the torque limiter is still engaged. You want just a tiny bit of flex right there, so that way you get a good engagement with this piece. And then once that's done, you are good to go. Repeat on the other side, and that's about it. Thanks for watching.